I don't know where the 10th one is.
Hey, it's your slide, my friend.
Because of the socks.
So you put it in there.
Number 10 are the socks.
Oh, it's socks.
That's right.
Yeah, socks. So these are 10 different things. The 10th one, by the way, is attitude and passion, knowledge and training. That kind of input to polishing. It's supposed to be number 10, but it's not here. It's not really socks. Socks is self-explanatory. It's obvious. So these are things that impact the result when you're machine polishing. Every single one of these. The tool, the product you're using, supplemental wetting agents or spraying water while you're working on it, the buffing pad, the backing plate, the paint itself, the technique, how you're actually applying this stuff makes a huge impact on how things come out. The environment around you, whether it's 100 degrees with 0% humidity or it's 10 degrees with 80% humidity.
You shouldn't be working in 10-degree weather.
Okay, maybe
That's really not a good
50
idea.
degrees.
Unless you're Massachusetts.
Yeah.
The time and expectations, what that means is if you need to do a 3-step process on a car and you're only given an hour, let's say, that can impact how the car comes out, right? I mean, you can't possibly do 3 complete steps in an hour. Okay, so I remind you of all this because, oh, there it is. Passion, number 10. See? Extra quick. Those 10 things, we're going to focus on this number 7, which is the technique itself. So, let's break down technique. It's all the things that the person does when they put this tool in their hand. So, it's everything, that's whatever I do with this, that is my technique. Techniques vary around the world, but we're going to dissect this and look at 5 things that make up a technique. And they're synergistic, meaning they're interrelated and work together. And they're a variable, means that I can change one of the 5 and change the result. You with me so far? Okay. Tell me, stop me. Okay. So 5 parts of the technique. When you see somebody with a machine in their hand and they're polishing paint, you can readily observe 5 different things going on. First one is the tool speed itself. So this is the setting on the tool. This is part of the technique. If you're high speed, it will impact the result. If you're low speed, you'll get a different result. Arm speed, now what that's called is as you're polishing the car and you're going back and forth, that is how fast you do that back and forth. I can go slow with the tool, or I can go really fast. Slow, or really fast.
You'd be amazed how many people try to keep up with the sound of the tool. They hear that motor going, next thing you know, they're doing this. And when I teach our detailing classes, we do the hands-on with everybody, and I get literally, we'll put my hands over that person's hands and make sure that they're getting proper pressure down there, and that they're moving the tool at the right speed, and they're doing nice overlapping strokes. And then somebody over here asks me a question, and I walk over and I answer this guy's question. I turn back around, and here's this person on the edge of the thing, and they're going like this again.
Yeah.
So I grab them, slow them down, get it going like this. Somebody else asks me a question, I come back, and they're doing this again. What?
The slower you move, the faster you move.
Yeah, the slower you move, the faster you work. Yeah, very, very often that's absolutely correct. If you're trying to hustle through it, you're going to be doing it over and over again.
So that's arm speed. The third thing you can observe is the downward pressure. This is the amount of force that the user is putting behind that tool, which will transfer onto whatever you're doing on the paint. Number 4 is pad angle. Can you demonstrate pad angle for us, Mr. Stu? So this would be flat, and on an edge would be this.
Sometimes that's all it takes. You don't have to be like this to be on an edge. If you're working with this tool and you're putting pressure down here, and that's just starting to lift up a little bit, it'll stop rotating. Not going to hurt anything. Not going to do much of anything either. So keeping that pad really flat is critical.
And then the 5th and final part of the technique is the actual application area. So when I squirt compound on the pad, I can apply the compound to this area right here, and that's considered my application area. So I'm going back and forth on this area. Or I can try and do the whole fender, with the tool and be doing this sort of thing. And that's obviously a bigger application area. The size of the area that you apply the product really impacts how that comes out. Sir?
With number 3, the downward pressure, does more downward pressure mean more heat generated? Because you're like transporting more pressure to the paint, and I would imagine that would cause more.
In general, that's a yes. That's a 10-4 in general. Downward pressure is one of those that, yeah, if you backed off and everything loosened up, then you have less heat and friction on the paint side, for sure. Okay, any questions on these 5?
That application area, as a rule of thumb, how big should that application area be?
2 by 2.
Yeah.
2 by 2. You guys are all good with that?
No, I'm not.
No.
You're not good with it?
How many of us follow that?
2 feet by 2 feet.
2 by 2.
Okay.
Usually maximum when you're doing defect removal.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes you have to shrink it down even a little bit smaller than that.
Because he went 16 by 2.
16 by, that's fine.
16 by 2.
I'll accept that. I'll accept it. Somebody once told me they weren't getting results, and I asked them went through everything with them, and everything seemed fine. And I got down to the size of their work area, and he said it was a small area. I said, how small? He said, I'm just doing the hood. I said, what are you talking about? What kind of vehicle are we looking at? Chevy Silverado pickup. There's more paint on the hood of a Silverado pickup truck than there is on an entire Mazda Miata. You would not go from front bumper to back bumper on a Miata to buff the thing out. It's not small relative to the vehicle. We're talking 2 feet by 2 feet max. Okay?
I'm going to add to application area in a couple slides here. That's a very important point, but I'm going to save it for them. So we understand this? Okay. This is a model of what technique is. We can dissect it to these 5 parts. Anywhere in the world, if I can see anybody machine polish, and if I know these 5 things, if I can observe these 5 things, then I can identify that person's technique. And there are trends in technique in different countries. They're very different. But if you understand these 5 parts, and I think you do, you nodded your head when I said, you get this? And you said, yeah. So if you understand that, then you can actually tweak your own technique based on what the needs of the car are. The other comment I'll make is these 5 for DA application, we're going to focus on that right now, on what is the best of each of these for a DA application, specifically to this system. So that's what we're going to focus on now. So tool speed. This is the setting on, this is the Meguiars tool, this is setting on our tool. It's measured in orbits per minute. And what happens when you adjust it up and down? And don't give me the answer that some people do, which I said, what happens when you adjust this up and down? Somebody said, well, it goes faster or slower.
It doesn't?
It does. So what happens on the paint? And I think you mentioned it earlier that, you know, when you increase tool speed, can we plug this in?
Just plug it in.
Over here? Oh, we can do it right there. So, this is setting 1. So that's the lowest setting on the tool, right? This is the fastest. So what do you think is more aggressive, the lowest setting or the fastest setting?
Lower setting.
I think it depends on the pressure. I mean, how could you say that?
Bingo!
Oscillate is going to be
Bingo.
rotating, the oscillations will be enhanced.
You're absolutely right. Speed, you can determine which is more or less aggressive without some of the other 5 parts of the technique. Because speed alone doesn't impact aggressiveness directly. High speed with high pressure, you know, small application area, that's a very aggressive description of the technique. Low speed, wide area, you know, less pressure, fast arm speed, that's a very mellow, less aggressive approach. Now with this system, there are specific recommendations on speed. The cutting step, you want to be at setting 4 or 5 on the Meguiars tool. And then on the finishing step, you want to back down to 3. So that's what it is for that system.
To look at this a touch deeper, all else being equal, same pad, same liquid, same arm speed, same pressure, everything else is equal. The only thing you change is the speed of the tool, which then becomes more aggressive, higher speed or lower speed. You haven't changed anything else. You're moving at the exact same speed over the paint, same liquid, same pad, same amount of pressure. All you vary is the tool speed, which is more aggressive, higher speed or lower speed.
Higher, because the revolutions are.
Yeah, higher. Yeah. Yeah.
This is all physics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't tell you I was a rocket
Yeah, it is.
scientist.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist to do this, but sometimes it helps.
Okay, number 2 is the arm speed. This is an example of a slow arm speed. That's a fast one, which Stoops illustrated earlier. So this is the rate of your speed back and forth. So within our system, relative to rotary and other DA systems, what we're recommending is slow arm speed. So you want to actually slow your speed down.
Again, all else being equal, same tool speed, same pressure, same pad, same liquid. Which is more aggressive, a slower arm speed or a faster arm speed?
Slower.
Slower? Did I hear somebody say faster?
Slower.
Everybody agrees it's slower? Slower. You'd say slower?
More aggressive.
More
You think
aggressive
I
and
think it's a
slower.
mess when you do this.
Makes it mess with
Messy,
you?
it's
You're leaving the
like
product
random.
to the machine over the same area for a long period of time.
Yeah, that's more aggressive too. So did you all get that? Slower arm
Slower arm
speed
speed is the more aggressive.
is more aggressive. And what we mean by more aggressive, we don't mean it's going to scour the paint. What we mean is we're pulling off defects faster.
Doing more work.
Yeah, doing like what your point was. Slow down to work faster. Okay? Make sense?
So far, so good?
Downward pressure, which this has a foam pad, and you can actually see the pressure being applied with a foam pad. You can actually see how much pressure is downward. This is measured, pounds per inch, or other ways of physically measuring it. But this is the best way to see it: is you actually look at the compression of the pad to see how much pressure you're putting down. Now, here's the thing about our system and DA application in general. It's a very important part of this. I wish we had plugged in over there, so I'm not doing this on a table. Can we get plugged in? Oh, cool. So, this is a dual action polisher, meaning that it's doing two things. It's orbiting like this, and then it's rotating. Thank you so much. Fire and hold. Okay, so you see this line on the backing plate? Yeah, there. So this is there purposely so I can see the rotations. All right? You see that line going around? Everybody see it? I can actually put pressure down and slow that down. You see that? Here I'm going to stop it, pretty much. It stops. Okay. Too much pressure, how you can tell with this kind of DA approach. If you do too much pressure, that means this is stopping the rotation. If you have stopped this rotation, your dual action is now turned into single action because you've neutered the rotation part. So the best performance you're going to get is with rotation. So you got to keep this disc moving. So it's easily done. You can put a lot of pressure down and stop it. But you don't want to put that much pressure down. You want to keep it going. Okay, you with me?
Now, it doesn't have to be rotating at a real high speed. Okay, that line's not going to be going so fast you can barely see it. It's going to be actually turning fairly slowly relative to a no load kind of thing. But you do want to keep rotation in that pad.
And actually there's a sweet spot on pressure where you want this rotating, but it's not super fast and it's not super slow. There is a sweet spot where it's just kind of moving along and you've got a good firm pressure on it.
And by the way, the more pressure you put down, the more important it is to keep that pad really flat. Because with a lot of pressure, you tip slightly, that pad will stop rotating.
Speaking of that, here's an example of flat pad. There's an example of pad angle. And what I'm here to tell you about DA approaches in general is any tilting of the pad is not good for DA action. Any tilting whatsoever. You want to try and keep it as flat as you can. Now if you're in really tight contours, the answer to that is go down to smaller pads so that you can fit inside there. Because the bigger a pad you are, the harder you're going to get into, tight areas. But in general, when it comes to pad angle, what I'm trying to teach you here is keep this as absolute flat as possible. To Mike's point, as soon as you tilt this on edge, you have a tendency to stop that rotation, and now you're not in dual action anymore. Okay? Make sense?
In keeping with our variables quiz, all else being equal, same pad, same tool speed, same liquid, same arm speed, you vary the pressure, right? Light pressure, that pad's spinning really fast. Heavy pressure, it's spinning much more slowly. Which is more aggressive, the lighter pressure or the heavier pressure? The heavier pressure. The pad's spinning a lot faster with lighter pressure. You still say heavier pressure? Heavier pressure. Heavier pressure is more aggressive.
So let's talk about the application area now. If you look at those pictures, there's a small application area and a big one. This dramatically impacts the performance of the result. I mean, in a big way. So your area, it's very important to choose that area and choose it carefully. Now, what Mike said earlier, I think you pointed to it in general, a 2x2 area, right? That's what we talked about earlier. Now, the one limitation I will tell you in the area, and this is about physical ergonomics on using a tool like this and how your body works, is in general you should not have an application area that's wider than your shoulders. So whatever I'm doing on this paint, it should be within the width of my shoulders. Alright? Because as soon as I go outside of that area and I'm beyond my shoulders, all the other 4 things part of the technique, now you have less control over those. The angle, the pressure, the arm speed, all that stuff goes out the window when you're way out here. And it also, from a fatigue standpoint, your body's not made to hold a 5.5-pound tool that's spinning and rotating and oscillating way out here.
How do you get over percentage of wood and stuff like that?
Well, we do, as detailers, we kind of do this thing, right? And you just got to know when you do that you're beyond what your body was made to do, which we do. I mean, how do I get that area right there? I have to extend, I have to stretch. But from side to side, I have control over that. I can keep it in front of me. But yeah, you're right. You do have to reach a bit out there to get that.
If you're not staying within those confines, we've seen people working. You're working down the side of the car, and you're physically going to be moving your body down along the side of the car as you go. But I've seen people as they're buffing in those larger areas, they're almost pivoting their body like this. And what happens to this plane? It's supposed to be flat against the paint. And they're pivoting, and I've seen people do this. And I'm like, you have to end up doing this kind of thing to keep it flat, and they don't. They turn their body like this, and they're lifting the pad up here. They're lifting the pad up here. What do you do? Why are you even wasting your time buffing over here? Keep it centered your shoulders.
So to be consistent with Mike's earlier questioning, if you look at those 2 application areas, all other things being the same, what would you consider is more aggressive? What's that?
It's a bigger area. Smaller area, slower speed.
I got smaller, I got bigger. Any other options?
If everything else is equal, pad, liquid, pressure, speed, everything else is equal.
He's out of range, he's going to be off the plane over on the right-hand side.
What's the question?
He's going to be off the plane on the right-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be tilted.
It's going to end up, yeah.
Well, I think even in here, I would be in between my shoulders. So this, I'd be in between here, but is this more aggressive or that? And the answer is that, because all the rotations, all the pressure, all the buffing cycle of the product, everything's happening in a smaller area. So by aggressive, what we mean is you're pulling defects faster. Okay? Is all this making sense? I know it's afternoon, it's nap time.
I just have one.
Okay, so those are the 5 things that impact the technique, and I hopefully, for this system, what we recommend is the more defects you have on a car, if you have lots of scratches, bring in your application area, focus it smaller, so you'll pull more scratches faster. But the less defects you have, you can kind of open up your your application area a little bit and go a little bit faster. But that's the technique for this.
All of these even come into play whether you're using traditional foam pads on a DA or if you're using a rotary buffer as well. They translate to both of those processes.
Okay, so that's the technique with this system. Now what I'm going to talk about now is this system's been launched for 2 years. And along the way we've learned some things, and now we've come up with, hey, there's some ways that we can help people get the best performance out of the system. And there's some things we experienced along the way. Like one of the things last year we experienced a quality issue with the cutting disc. You're nodding your head. Some people experience this. So it's something that we're embarrassed about. We apologize. We didn't plan for it, but it's something that happened. So I'm straight up about it and telling you guys, hey, we ran into it.
Yep.
So we have some of these layers delaminating coming apart. And it wasn't intended to do that, obviously. That's not part of our experience that we want you to have. So what we did is we upgraded the bonding system. We came across a new fabrication process, and we had previous manufacturing outside of the country, and we brought it in the country where we have a little more control. So we kind of fixed that issue, and we're moving forward, but we just want to let you know that since our launch, that's one of the things we experienced, good or bad. The other thing we learned, we knew this going in, but priming the disc, we knew going in was important, but we didn't know how important it was. And now we're telling you it's extremely important. With foam pads, people just usually put a couple drops and you just go, right? Well, this one, you have to prime this pad first. And what it means to prime this is each one of these little fibers, each one needs to be coated with the liquid. Because each one that's not coated is not doing anything. Sir?
That's a good practice to get in with pretty much any foam pad you have, and then a microfiber disc.
It's a good practice. Priming is a very good practice. So what it means is I can take the white disc and squirt some compound and get some coverage on the pad. That's not complete priming. Complete priming is where all the fibers change color to the color of the compound. That's proper priming. And you really need that. If you're going to pull these defects out, all the fibers need to be coated with the compound. Yes?
After the sufficient priming, like before you even put it on the paint, would you add 3 drops of polish?
No, we're going to show that, but I think the answer to that is we'll prime the pad, and then I think I'm ready for an application. And then when I go to my second application area, I'll put a couple of pea-sized dots, and then I'm good to go. After you're priming, and you'll be surprised at how much product it'll take to prime the pad, because you're sitting there squirting a lot of product on there. But once it's primed, very, very small amount to do the rest of the car. Just really, really small dots is all you need.
And that's one of the biggest struggles that people have transitioning from using foam to this is those 3 little pea-sized drops. That's all the product you're going to use for each section that you're going to do. And I've seen people that just like they start moving faster and faster as they're buffing, with each subsequent application of product, those drops grow and they get bigger and bigger. I've asked people where they buy their produce because they're leaving like Brussels sprout sized blobs on there. I've never seen peas that big before. So it's shocking how little product you actually use in this system.
Okay, so you got that part about priming? Really important with this system. The other thing we learned is pad cleaning and pad maintenance. So there's a couple of methods that as you're working on the car, you want to clean these discs. And it's important to clean as you go because you're pulling paint off as you remove these defects. So that paint residue is sticking in this pad. So you want to clean that off as you go. One way is compressed air, which is the best way, I think. You sit there and blow it off the disc and then you go to the next panel. Another way is a pad conditioning brush.
Right on the wall behind Joe.
Yeah, Joe will raise that up and show you. So that's a pad conditioning brush right there. Oh, thank you. So these you just kind of, turn the tool on and brush the fibers and it flicks off any contamination or buildup of residue. Another way is a pad washer, which we've got to have those in here. There's one over here on the cart. This is a way of cleaning pads as you go, as you're working on the car, but also at the end of the car. So in this case, you would put the tool in there, clean the pad.
I'll hold this up while you talk. This was my class yesterday.
So that's a pad washer. So this is one way of cleaning it. Now, as a matter of practice, detailers, they might do this on the fly, kind of on the car, but the best use is after you're done with this car, you clean the pad, get it ready for the next car. Another way is machine washing. You can take the microfiber disc with your microfiber towels, throw it in a machine washer and dryer. Just keep the temperatures down. You know, low temp in the washer and the dryer.
This regular cleaning of the pad, we really can't stress this enough. If you're used to working with foam, how often are you cleaning your pads on the fly when you're working with foam? How often are you brushing those things out? How often are you spinning it against a towel to force excess product out? I see so many people that do that far too infrequently. With this, it's not a recommendation, it's critically important. Microfiber is really good at doing what? Hanging on to stuff. Okay? You're going to start overusing product, you keep adding product to this all the time, you're going to start to load it up with product, you're going to get dried product around the edges. It's one thing to get dried product around the edge of a foam pad, you bump it into something and it all goes spraying off, you got dust all over the place. This will actually grab and hold onto it, it'll start to clump up. Jason mentioned the paint residue that you're pulling off. It'll start to gather that up, and you'll end up with little chunks of stuff in here, and you start putting pigtails in the paint. It's so easy to avoid by after every single section that you buff. You either blow it out with compressed air or hit it with a pad brush to brush it out. Not after every panel, not halfway around the car. After every section you do, clean that out. It takes a couple of seconds. It not only cleans everything out, fluffs those fibers back up, and just gets you a better result with less difficulties and problems down the line.
We have a unique opportunity because this car is not a clear-coated car. It's a single-stage paint, from what they tell me, since they've been working on this. And it's great because you can actually see on the pad what you're pulling off. So we'll show that in a minute, but you'll be actually surprised how much you're pulling off, and thus the reason that you need to keep cleaning. The other thing we learned was on technique. We learned that this system, although very user-friendly, easy to learn, but there is a technique that you can learn to get the best performance, and that's the one that we've been talking about. So moderate to firm pressure, vacuum plate must be rotating, and to Mike's point, it doesn't have to be rotating fast. In fact, it's good if it's kind of moderate speed. Slow arm speed, you know, his point was to slow down to work faster, and then a small application area. This is the best performance for this system. On the finishing wax, the second step, it's pretty much the same thing except minor tweaks. Your arm speed you can speed up a bit on the second step. So the compound step, you're actually going slow. You're trying to isolate and go after defects. The second step, you can kind of pick up your speed because you're refining and improving the clarity in the paint, but you're also laying down wax. So you can actually increase your arm speed a little bit. And you can also go to a larger area. Yes, sir?
The abrasives in D300, if you're, say you don't have too much pressure on the system, will it not abrade as well? Like, if you don't have too much pressure and the pad's spinning, you know, faster than it probably should be, will it not abrade as well?
It will do some work even with the weight of the tool, you know, no added pressure. It will do some work on its own, but the answer to your question depends on a variable that we talked about earlier, and that's the paint hardness. So if the paint's on the softer side, even that approach will pull more defects out. If it's on the harder side, it's possible you can do that approach and it won't do much at all. It won't pull your scratches out.
Well, then you said you cover a bigger area. Can you just take one of those sponge things and just put it on off of that way or not?
By hand?
Yeah.
You could, but the finishing disc and the finishing wax they're made to work together with that tool and do a lot better refinement and waxing. And if you and I had a competition and you were to do half this car and I were to do this half and you were doing it by hand and I was doing it with the machine, I would get done faster and my finish would look better than yours by hand. Not because I'm better, but because that technique is better. So your hand pressure is uneven, it's slow.
Oh, no, I was just saying to just put the wax on the car and then take the buffer over.
Oh, you put the wax on and use the buffer to remove the residue?
Why would you?
That way, the reason he asked that is because that used to be an old school approach. You used to put wax on by hand, take the rotary and buff it off.
With the bonnet, yeah.
Yeah, but we don't do that anymore. And actually, this system was designed so that microfiber disc does most of the work, so you don't have to. Yeah.
You'd be amazed at how easy this wax is to wipe off, even when it's completely dry. I mean, like, ridiculously easy. And it was designed that way.
So the other thing we learned is this process does generate some heat buildup. Now, the heat is not on the paint with this process. The heat goes up into the tool and in the backing plate. So that when you can actually take a heat gun and measure the heat that's generated in this process,
Right there.
and the most temperature you'll find is right here between the pad and the backing plate. That's the highest temperatures you'll measure. It'll be cooler on this side, it'll be cooler on the paint, but that DA action, all the stress and the heat and friction is right at that backing plate. So to manage that, what we're saying, one of the things you can do is switch out pads as you go, because you're going to build up heat. Like if I was doing this car, I'm removing defects, I'm going. By the time I get to here, maybe here, I'm really heating up the backing plate and the disc. So when you buy these pads, they come in pairs. There's 2 in a package. And it has a purpose for that. It's not that we're trying to sell you more pads. The purpose is that we're telling you it takes 2 discs to do a car. So you go down here, down half this car, pull that pad off, put a fresh, cool one on, and finish the other side. So pad, heat management is something we learned. And in some cases, a bigger car, or you're grinding after more defects, you may want to do 3 or 4 pad swap outs as you go. Sir?
Can I ask a question?
I don't know.
Have you ever done any heat tests between, say, a fiberglass washer and the black composite material washers? Is there a difference in heat retention between just the material used for the washers for the backing plates?
Well, we do know there is a difference. I personally haven't done the data where you know exactly what the heat difference is. He's talking about there's an insulating washer between the backing plate and the tool, the counterweight assembly, and that's a very important piece of this. In fact, if you don't have that, a lot of heat's going to transfer in both directions.
Compression washer.
Yeah. So it's important to have that, but some of the material of the washer is made out of different materials. So his question was, do you get more or less heat transfer that way? And the answer is yes, you do. That material does make a difference, but we have that washer in this, so you don't have to worry about that. It's in our backing plate already. Okay, the other thing is top coat hardness, we've learned, really impacts the performance of the system. So if the paint's really hard, those defects are going to come out slower. And we already know this. And if the paint's really soft, you may get this thing called a DA haze. Have you seen this? Yeah. So it's like a little grayness in the paint. There's little tiny tick marks if the paint's really soft. Just something that happens with the DA action. And hard paint will slow down the defect removal, whereas soft paint will be susceptible to this hazing that we're talking about. So some of the hurdles that we've come across since this was launched, from rotary to this system, it tends to be a big mental leap for some folks. Like if you've done rotary for 20 years and you switch to this system, it's going to rock your boat. I guarantee you, it's a little bit of a hard transition. The other thing we learned is the paint variability, as I mentioned. We also have run into issues where we're telling you need to use these backing plates. And some people say, well, I already have a different backing plate, so I'll use your pad and liquid with a different backing plate, which is okay. We know people are going to do that. But you just need to know that that's a hurdle, that's a problem, because you may not get the performance that we're claiming with it.
Get excess heat buildup pretty quickly too, if it's mismatched dramatically.
The other kind of hurdle we came across, the system, relatively speaking, is very easy to learn, very easy to use, but there is a different technique between the first step and the second step. And what was that? I just described it. Anybody remember?
Speed. Arm movement.
Yeah, faster arm movement in the second step, less pressure maybe. So the more pressure, slower arm speed on the first step, and then you change that on the second one. Sometimes people have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Like,
See, a lot of people they go through the whole car with that moderate to heavier pressure and real slow movements with the compound. They put the finishing pad on, they put the finishing wax on, and they're doing the exact same thing. It's like, no, come on, hustle, let's go. You can move quite a bit quicker at that point.
and then the other thing we learned is this whole priming thing, which I really hammered home with you already. It's very, very important to do this priming, and we learned that this is a critical part of the process. Another hurdle was the perception of slow defect removal. You can take that rotary tool and a wool pad and you can mow down defects really fast. And I'm not disputing that at all. I'm saying this is a good defect removal system that from start to finish, all things considered, this is relatively faster than doing a whole rotary process where you're doing 3 steps of rotary, you have the cleanup, the preparation and all that. So I'm not saying that it's faster defect removal than a rotary. I'm just saying the whole system is a great alternative to hitting it with a rotary. So heating up the disc, we already went over that. If you're wiping the compound on a hot surface, or you do what's called short cycling. So if I'm on this black car and I'm out there in the sun and I'm trying to do this system, you may have issues with this compound step if the surface is too hot. So if it feels so hot that you can't leave your hand on there, chances are you're going to have problems with this compound. But guess what? You're going to have problems with any compound at that point. So, all right, moving right along. We have this comment about M105 or other ultra-cut compound. People say, oh, I use the microfiber disc with 105 and it works much better. And yeah, that is sometimes true, but the overall thing about 105 is it was not specifically made for the microfiber disc and this whole DA action. So I'm not taking away from that comment that 105 might cut better than this D300 correction cream. But that compound wasn't made for this process. This compound was. Mm-hmm. So you'll tend to get a better user experience, less dust, all that stuff.
The less dust is huge. You compare this to 105 on this, there's virtually no dust at all. With this, tends to wipe off easier too than 105 will.
All right. So in this catalog, which you're welcome to have, there's a stacked on the back table. But there is on the back side, towards the back is descriptions of each of these items that I just talked about. So if you want some material, I know some people like to read. But let's go into the hands-on part. How much time do I have, Mike?
You have till 3 o'clock.
Okay.
My class starts at 3. Take all
Okay.
the time you need.
So that means I can go until like 3:30, 4.
You bet.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do, oh wait, is there any questions before we break up? Has this been good for you?
I
Yeah.
have a weird novice question.
Okay.
With regards to the hazing aspect relative to the paint hardness.
Yes.
Is there a way to evaluate that right from the get-go so that you're kind of cognizant of it?
Sure. When you're at the grocery store, you take the shopping cart and you just grind it down the side.
So there really is, there's
No.
no way of knowing.
There is a way, actually. There's a device that will measure top coat hardness. Yeah, paint thickness gauge will measure the thickness. I'm talking about a device that measures the hardness.
So visually, I mean, there's really
No.
no way for you to
The
observe.
thing that you want to do, obviously you're going to wash and dry the car, you're going to clay it if it needs to be clayed. Do a test spot in an area that's really visible with good light. Okay?
Right.
That means on the hood or the trunk of the car, and then roll it out in the sun and see what you got. If you look at a vehicle like this, that when you get some good light on it, this paint is a mess. Without good light on it, it looks pretty good. This paint is just loaded up with swirls. If you do an initial test area, about the usual 2-foot square thing, if you've gotten rid of all the defects and that paint looks really nice and black and glossy, or whatever color the car is, you know that process right then and there is going to be fantastic, and it's going to work on the entire car. If you do that test spot and you only get rid of half of your defects, the paint looks shiny, but it still has defects. It still has swirls in it.
Right.
But it's less than half of what you started with. Okay, that tells you need to go to a more aggressive system? No. It tells you need to maybe buff a little bit longer or just do it twice. If you buff and all of a sudden your black car that's full of swirls now looks like a gray car with no swirls, that's a heavy DA haze that you've created. Sometimes you can't get around that because the defects are so severe that you need to be aggressive enough to remove the defects. If that process is then really badly leaving a DA haze in there, then you're going to follow up with probably a finishing polish, maybe even on a foam pad to correct that. If the haze isn't real bad at all, then this finishing pad or the finishing wax will clean it all up in the second step. But always, always, always do that test spot first the first time you work on any car.
Yeah.
You can have two cars at home, and this system will work great on both of them, but on one car, it's a single pass, and it's beautiful, goes straight to wax. On the other car, you've got to get a little bit more aggressive, hit it a couple of times, do an intermediate polish, and then wax, because the paints aren't all the same. Do that test spot the first time you work on any car. Once you, because trust me, if you just jump in and you compound that whole car, and then you're going to do a second polish step on the whole thing, and then you wax it, and then you roll it out in the sun, and you realize you only got rid of half of your defects, you get to do everything all over again, and you thought you were done. That is not a fun surprise. The fun surprise is when you've got your laundry ready to go to the dry cleaners, and you reach into a pocket to make sure there's no papers or anything in there, there's a $100 bill. Yeah, that's no fun when you find out you have to do everything all over again. Good surprises, bad surprises. Do that
Good question,
spot.
though. That's a very good question, because even professional detailers, they don't know paint hardness. They identify paint hardness the same way you would, which was you got to do a test spot.
One thing that helps is a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then you can gauge. If you've only bumped out one car, how would you know if it's hard or soft? If you've bumped out 1,000 cars, it's pretty fast to tell, just from experience, wow, a couple passes, you got it. That tells me that paint's pretty soft. So experience is how you tell.
Hey, Joe, can I call on you briefly for a second, real brief? Because Joe, I just want him to tell you a couple points before we jump in the hands-on. Joe is a professional detailer, does this work every day, all day. And you use this system, so why don't, from a professional's point, have a couple comments on, closing comments on the system before we jump into it.
Just like that?
Yeah.
No pressure, man.
This system, when it first came out, my honest opinion on it was I did not like it. Not because it didn't correct and do everything it promises. I didn't like it because it took away all the skill, it made less valuable all the skill I needed or I acquired over the years with the rotary polisher. So it kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of dumbed down the skills you needed to do an exceptional finish. But I have a business, and as a business owner, it was great because now I can hire monkeys and I can present them this, I can present to them this system.
Your employees.
Hey, I'm paying them well over 50 cents minimum wage.
I can't, Hunter.
I got one of them watching right now. So what I'm trying to say is I can get guy, and like Mike was saying earlier, with a minimal amount of instruction and some practice, you can really bring out an exceptional finish. So that was my initial thing. Right. It's simple to use. It's not very expensive. The machine, the rotary polisher. This right here, we can do the correction, and then we can do the wax, and we can do more things than just only correct. Anything more?
Yeah, you do this system on some pretty high-end cars.
No, the highest end car. I am the. Let me make that straight.
Okay, sorry.
We all know and we all admire Ferrari and Lamborghini, and we're talking $200,000, $300,000 cars. Well, I am the detailer, as of right now, for Bugatti USA in Southern California. And for those of you who are not familiar with Bugatti, their highest line car is $2.6 million. So we use this system with complete confidence on $2 million cars. Like this, but we use it. No, I'm confident. It's an awesome, we go. I don't want
He's shaking so bad he doesn't actually have to turn the tool on.
So we use this system we got to get a shine that meets the car, that stands up to the type of car it is. And we do that with 100% Meguiars products. But when I bumped into Barry Meguiars at Pebble Beach, and I told him we were using all Meguiars on the Bugattis, he was doing a happy dance after that. No, I really didn't. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on it. I'm so confident with it. I use it in everyday cars all the time. And you know, I'm not here for foo-fooiness, and you know, nothing against enthusiasts, but I'm in it to make a living. And you see, this is not cheap to keep like that. so it needs to work. I'm not here because it smells good or looks good or the Meguiar's name is cool. If it didn't work and it was garbage, I just wouldn't use it because I gotta pay my bills. And it works, makes the cars look great, and it's, you know, it's awesome. Is that it?
Okay, thank you. I'll pay you later.
That's right.
All right, so I'm going to show you this real quick. If you all want to stand up, stretch your legs, we're going to jump on this car.